sword and how important it is, and people fighting for the right to own a sword has been lost. And I was asking you what your whole view on the world is.
Well, you're right, and Daniel is right. The sword is a symbol of liberty, and liberty is something that's very challenged these days. I mean, there are things that overtly challenge our civilization, and because we tend to be rather modest and rather, we don't want to politically upset people needlessly, we tend to stand back a little bit. But look, Western European Christian civilization is very important. It has produced art, music, drama, theater, dance, beyond the imaginings of any other culture. It stands for the liberty of the individual, the right of the individual to think and, to the extent that he doesn't affect others, practice virtually anything he believes. It celebrates democracy. It celebrates the right of democracy over theocracy or any other isocracy. It's about the equality of men before the law. It's also about the equality of women with men in front of the law. It doesn't assume that women are third-class citizens. It has abolished slavery. Now, you must understand, slavery is an issue that particularly resonates with me. When I was a little boy, my father was a policeman in Africa. He took me down to the dockside in Dar es Salaam Harbor in 1955, and he said, "You see that dhow there? Twice a year it comes down from Saudi Arabia. It stops in Aden, comes down the coast, goes here, goes to Beira in Portuguese Mozambique. On the way down, it's got machine tools and machine parts. On the way back up, it's always got 2 or 3 little black boys. And these are slaves going back to Saudi Arabia. And the United Nations will not allow me to do anything about it." Saudi Arabia only abolished slavery in 1965. And there is still slavery present in Saudi Arabia, I will wager. These are huge, huge gains for mankind that our civilization has made. And you've got to understand that certain religions, certain faiths, certain things, they have their strengths, but in a way, the way we engage in our civilization and within our faiths is the way that we turn out as people. And our civilization allows us to become rubbish, or it allows us to do almost anything. Other religions are more straitjacket in their intellectual approach to education and theocracy and things like that. But ours gives us an unassailable liberty, and we must always be prepared to defend it. I'm proud to belong to Western European Christian civilization. It's a glorious tradition, and we must speak out firmly and fairly for it.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. It's fashionable for 50 years to demonize the West, to attack anything that has to do with Western culture, and to act like slavery was invented by the West when it was actually the West that began to end slavery. Why do the modern, so many modern thinkers, individuals love to paint the West as the progenitor of slavery, when really it was the West that began to end slavery, and many forms of slavery, as you said, still go on around the world. But that's okay. We only see endless films and productions about how the West is bad. The West is bad. And that's because liberty and freedom and the Magna Carta and so much more springs from the West. It is the enemy of the high-tech technocrats, I believe.
Well, there are a number of reasons why. For some reason, about 20% of the British population, I can't speak for the American population, but about 20% of the British population really hate Britain and all it stands for. Now, these are white liberals. They're often well-educated, but they have no real understanding or caring for history, and they would obliterate history if they could. They would forget about Magna Carta, the Bill of Rights, they would say say that they embrace a greater freedom. But in fact, when they're in government, what they do is subtract all the freedoms that they can possibly get their hands on from the society that they're in. I don't know what you do about those 20%. I think they're just, what do they say? The treason of the clerics.
Why do they seem to always be in control? We have the same types here who claim they want all this liberty, but really they come to control. Like it's passed the House here to restrict free speech and have speech laws where if something you say hurts someone's feelings, you get arrested. I mean, how can that be happening in the United States? How can that be happening in Europe? How can this be going on?
Well, Europe has a tradition of autocracy and intolerance. America is still the last best hope of mankind. And I hope that you will learn from our lessons. But I mean, I think in Europe, and particularly in my country, the liberal point of view is absolutely without question in public office. You daren't raise a question. Because if you do, you will be literally branded a fascist. No matter that you sort of say, well, look, these are the things I believe in, equality, democracy, these are the things. But that doesn't matter. And there are certain things that are bywords for liberalism. If you don't endorse them, then really you're a fascist.
So what do we do? Get outside the comfort zone and stop caring if they brand us and point out they are the ones behaving like fascists with the new global carbon tax? I don't want to get you involved here in a heresy. I don't want to get you burned at the stake here.
There it is. You're a fascist, you see, because you are, I detect from your tone that you are a global warming skeptic.
I'm a denier.
Or is it a climate change skeptic? Because I think the thing has moved on slightly from global warming now to climate change. Yes, well, it is true. Climate changes. That's one of the nature of being a sort of dynamic living planet. You know, I mean, I don't suppose the climate's changing too much on Venus right at the moment. You know, because the bit near the sun is melting. But anyway. That would be one of the real reason why the liberals. I'm only using that in the most pejorative way. There is something else called a liberal tradition, which
the people calling themselves liberals, you would call yourself, or I would call myself, a classical liberal. I want the classical, real freedoms, not their fake straitjacket, and you're being careful not to commit thought crime because some European countries do want to arrest people. Don't listen. They're now teaching that summer is abnormal, and some kids don't think you're supposed to have seasons. Like you said, it's global warming, now it's climate change. But go ahead, sir.
No. I mean, the real reason they're getting away with it is that people like me and people like you have more interesting things to do with our lives than to stand up and engage in political activity. But our situation is so dire here that I'm actually seriously thinking of standing for the British Parliament at the next election. Unfortunately, I've not lived my life in that politically correct way that one should if one's going to be a politician. I have far too many scarecrows skeletons rather in my closet, and I will be ripped to shreds if I do. But the fault is ours. Because we were too busy, too self-important, and too absorbed with the wonderful and myriad things that we can do with our lives in this glorious civilization we live in, to actually stop the cockroaches from running.
And now, I was about to say that, we've got to climb in and remove the parasites that are now arming themselves against us.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I mean, I spoke to a senior civil servant about 2 years ago, and I said, well, what do you see happening? And he said, well, we will be a small part of the European Union. We will be ruled from Brussels. We will get rid of the monarchy, and we will be a small and peaceful part of Europe. And I said, well, I mean, didn't you take an oath of allegiance as a part of your thing to serve the crown in Parliament and things like that? And he said, well, I mean, I think we can dispose of that into the dustbin of history. I said, in my eyes, sir, you're just a traitor. You're just a quisling and a traitor. And he smiled at me and said, unfortunately, you can't do anything about it.
Incredible arrogance. I've run into similar things.